Hey everyone. So, have you ever found yourself completely tied in knots trying to figure out if you should say funnier or more funny? Or maybe busiest versus most busy? Yeah, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we're going to crack the code on one of the most common and sometimes, let's be honest, trickiest parts of English grammar: how we compare things using adjectives. So, let's jump right in with a phrase I know you've heard, and maybe even used yourself. You see it everywhere, in ads, you hear it in conversations. Oh, this product is very unique. But hang on, is that actually correct? Can something really be very one of a kind? Well, the short answer, at least in formal writing, is yeah, it's a mistake. And the reason why is actually pretty fascinating. It all comes down to this special group of words we call absolute adjectives. And don't you worry, by the time we're done here, you'll know exactly what those are and how to use them like a pro. So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the absolute basics, the fundamentals. Then we'll get into these simple rules that, work almost all of the time. We'll introduce you to the rebels that just love to break those rules. Then we'll tackle those tricky all-or-nothing words, like unique. And finally, we'll talk about when you can actually bend these rules for creative effect. All right, let's get started and open up our grammar toolkit. When we compare things, we're really just picking between two main tools. And once you get what each one is for, I promise the rest of these rules are going to click right into place. So the first tool in the box is the comparative. The best way to think about this is as a one-to-one comparison. You've got two things, and you're just pointing out a difference between them. My car is faster than your car. This coffee is hotter than that one. It's always a comparison of two. And tool number 2 is the superlative. This is your go-to when you're comparing 3 or more things. You use it to pinpoint the extreme, the one at the very top or the very bottom of the scale. It's not just larger than one other house, it's the largest of all the houses in the whole neighborhood. So let's just boil it all down to one simple idea. If you're ever confused, just count. Seriously. Count the things you're comparing. If it's 2, you're in comparative land. You're thinking If it's 3 or more, you need a superlative. You're thinking est. It's just a simple numbers game. Okay, so now we know what these tools are supposed to do. The next logical question is, well, how do we make them? And luckily, for most adjectives, it comes down to a really simple trick. You just count the syllables. I like to think of it like a sandwich. The rules for the outside parts, 1 syllable and 3 or more syllables, are super simple. 1 syllable, like big, you just add or est. 3 or more syllables, like the word important, you just put more or most in front of it. It's that tricky middle, those 2-syllable words, where things can get, a little complicated. And you can see that pattern right here. Now, for those tricky 2-syllable words, there is one pretty clear rule. If it ends in y, like happy, you just treat it like a short word, happier, happiest. But for almost every other 2-syllable word, you use more and most. And honestly, here's a little pro tip. If you're ever stuck, just using more is almost always the safest and most natural-sounding choice. And a quick heads up about spelling. When you're adding these endings, you gotta watch out for 2 really common traps. For those short words that have a consonant-vowel-consonant pattern, like sad or thin, you double that last letter. And, like we just saw, for words ending in y, like busy, you swap that y for an I before you add your ending. So, we've got our syllable rules down. But of course, just when you think you've got it all figured out, the English language loves to throw a curveball. It's time to meet the rule breakers, this small group of really common words that just ignore all the rules completely. I like to call these the rebel squad of adjectives, right? They just don't care about your neat little syllable counting system. They do their own thing. And because they're so common, we really just have to get to know them one by one. Look, there's no secret trick here. These just have to be memorized. We all know not to say gooder or baddest, right? And that's because we've heard good, better, best our entire lives. Honestly, just learning this short list is one of the fastest ways to make your speaking and writing sound way more fluent. Okay, let's circle all the way back to our opening mystery, the case of very unique. This brings us to our last category of exceptions. These are the words that you just can't compare at all. They are what we call absolute. This light switch is the perfect way to think about it. A light is either on or it's off. There's no a little bit on or kinda on. And these adjectives work the exact same way. They represent a state that's already at 100%. Just think about these words for a second. Complete, final, impossible. By their very definition, they're absolute states. A task can't be more complete. A decision can't be more final. And, as the old saying goes, someone can't be very dead. Because these words already describe the ultimate state. Adding a word like more or very is just redundant. And that same logic about being redundant helps us with another common mistake, the double superlative, like saying most prettiest. Think about it. Prettiest already means most pretty. So sticking most in front is just saying the same thing twice. The rule here is super simple. Pick one. Either use the est ending or use the word most, but never, ever use them both together. Okay, now that you've got the standard rules down, let's talk about how to use them and even how to break them like a pro. Because in language, sometimes breaking a rule is actually a really powerful, creative choice. First, let's be super clear. A double comparative like more tastier is just incorrect, plain and simple, because tastier already includes the idea of more. But there's this really cool and totally correct structure that uses two comparatives to show a cause and effect relationship. The more you study, the more you learn. See how that works? It shows that as one thing goes up, so does the other. So what about that most prettiest error? While you definitely wouldn't use that in a formal essay, you hear it in the real world all the time. Why? Well, for effect. People use it for emphasis, for humor, or to show really extreme emotion. And this is where grammar stops being just about rules and starts becoming about style. The key is knowing your audience and making a conscious choice. And this all brings us to the ultimate pro tip. For writing that is truly powerful and credible, your best bet is to just ditch those weak modifying words altogether and use specific details instead. So don't just say a result was almost perfect. Say it earned 98% positive feedback. Being specific is always going to be more persuasive than being vague. And that really leaves us with a final thought. Grammar isn't some rigid cage of rules. It's a toolkit for expression. Now that you know how these tools work, the choice is yours. Are you going to use them for precision? Or are you going to break them for effect?